Laying biblical foundations in the lives of preschoolers and children is vital in their spiritual development. Let's discuss today 10 ways how you can be an A-plus teacher and be effective in building on this foundation as you teach. The first thing that we have to do is we have to be prayerful. If we look at what Ephesians 6:11 says, it says that we have to put on that full armor of God, not just a portion of it, not just the helmet, not just the breastplate. We have to put on the full armor of God so that we can stand against the schemes of the devil. And so if we're going to be an effective teacher, we have to first make sure that we're preparing ourselves and putting on that armor. I feel like sometimes when I go in to teach, and you may feel like this too, when you go in to teach, if it's your 2-year-old class or your preteen class, you feel like you're already going into battle, right? When you get there. I feel like that some mornings when I wake up at my household with my 2 boys, it's like, really? We've already started this, right? And so very first off, we have to make sure that we're preparing our hearts and putting on our full armor as a teacher so we can be effective. And we have to teach from our overflowing of God's love pouring into us, or what's going to happen quickly is we're going to burn out. And so one of the key things that we need to make sure is that we're being prayerful, we're being fed, we're spending time in God's word, we're studying, we're attending a worship service, we're being spiritually fed as well, because we want that to be an overflow of God's love and his word pouring into us so it can overflow into the kids that we're teaching. And so we have to be prayerful and prepare our hearts first. Another aspect of being prayerful is that we need to pray for the kids and their families that we're ministering to. We may never know how God can move through our prayers in the lives of the kids and the families that we're working with. And a quick reminder for me is just taking a sticky note, writing a child's name on it, and put it in a prominent place in your house. Maybe it's on your refrigerator. Maybe it's in the kitchen because you spend a lot of time preparing meals. Or maybe it's on the bathroom mirror as you're getting ready in the morning. Put it in some place where you're going to see it. And that should be a quick little reminder when you see that sticky note and that name of that child and that family, that just be a reminder to pray for them at that time. And you can easily, if you want to put several sticky notes with different names on them or add a couple of different names as you go, just put that in a place to remind you, hey, I need to be praying for the families and the kids that are in my class and that I have the opportunity to minister to. And so to start out to be that A-plus teacher and be effective, we have to be prayerful. The second thing we have to do is we have to be prepared and on time. All right, did you hear what I said? We have to be prepared and on time. And so make sure you're taking that time to prep ahead. We don't want to, grab your curriculum book or whatever it is that your leader guide for that day on your way to church that morning. Doesn't work that way. And so in my household, we can never find shoes on Sunday morning. For some reason, we can find them the rest of the week, but not on Sunday morning. And so you want to make sure that you're planning ahead and prepping so that you're ready before you even wake up on that Sunday morning or that Wednesday night, whenever your program is in place. And you want to set aside that time each week and to prep so that God can use that time to maybe pour more into you so that it gives you time to think through and everything so you're ready before you enter your class. And you always need to prepare for more than what you really need. How many times have you thought, oh, this activity is going to take 5 minutes and it takes 1? And it's like you give a kid an activity and they're done in like 10 seconds. Like, really? The curriculum, the leader guide said it was going to take 5. And so you always need to prepare for more than what you really need. And let's just face it, some programming and different services, they go a little bit longer than anticipated, right? So we need to make sure that we have prepared for more than what we really need. And here's the key thing. If we're late and unprepared, guess who takes control of the classroom? You should be able to guess this pretty quickly. The kids are going to take control. And I say they can pick up in a millisecond if we are ready, if we're prepared and ready for them. If we are not, they're going to quickly take control of the classroom. And then chaos usually erupts. And so we want to make sure that we get there early. You want to arrive early so you can do your proper setup. And you can be there when that first kid arrives. You be at the door ready for them to receive them and receive that family with a smile. They don't need to see you running around frantically trying to get out all the activities on the tables, get your stuff in, or we really don't want kids to be waiting in the classroom and you haven't even arrived yet. And so that doesn't set a good tone for those families. Because what that says is, hey, do they really care for my kids? They're not even prepared. Teachers aren't even here. And so it kind of sets a different tone. So we want you to arrive early and make sure that you're on time, you're prepared, you have that time to do your setup and everything that you need so you're able to receive when that first child gets there. And that's a great opportunity where you can do some ministry at the door. That's the time that you can minister to those families as they're getting there. And so arriving early and being prepared kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day. So everything hopefully will run a little smoothly. So first thing we need to do is we need to be prayerful. We need to be prepared and on time. And then thirdly, we need to be safe. Of course, we live in a time where safety is a higher issue now and higher priority on a lot of lists and different things. And so, but even in our kids' ministries, we need to make sure that we're providing a safe environment for them. And so we need to be safe and thinking through inside and even outside of the classroom on this. And so when we're talking about being safe, we need to make sure that, hey, have we screened all of our volunteers before we've placed them in the classroom with kids? Have we had gone through a process to where, yes, we've talked about abuse awareness so that we're protecting kids and our leaders from abuse? Have we cleared background checks and everything along that line? And so making sure that, hey, we've already done the screening process that we need and equip these leaders before we put them in the classroom. We don't want just a person to say, hey, yeah, I'll help with twos today, but we haven't gone through the proper screening process with them. And so if we're wanting to create that safe environment for them, we need to make sure we've done the screening process that we need to do. Also, do we have policies and procedures in place? Do we have certain guidelines that our leaders need to know and work through? And as a leader, you want to make sure that, hey, is there policies and procedures that I need to know about? And so this is great where you need to check with your kids minister and say, hey, what are those? Make sure that kids ministers, that you're training those leaders on that so that they understand and know, hey, what are the policies, procedures, what are the guidelines that we need to abide by? And so, because you want to create that safe environment, not just for the minors and the kids, you want to create that safe environment for the leaders too. Are you doing the 2-adult rule and that aspect to where your leaders have accountability and have someone that can vouch for them? Are you creating that environment that's age appropriate? Do you have the right size chairs and furniture in the classroom? The age appropriate toys. You don't want to put marbles in your 2-year-old room because what do 2-year-olds do? Everything goes in the mouth. And so you want to make sure you've got the age appropriate furniture, age appropriate toys and activities and resources in your classroom as well. And another thing when we're talking about being safe is you want to make sure that you're organized. Clutter can cause stress, distractions, and even safety hazards. So make sure that you have stuff stored away properly where it needs to be. And if you have a lot of boys in your class, they need a lot of free space. Boys need that free space and ample space so they can move about freely. So making sure things are put away where they need to be, you've got things organized, then you have that freeing up that extra space needed for movement to happen. We can't just expect for kids to come in and expect them to do that whole hour learning time without ever getting up and moving about. So you want to create that environment where they can move and they can be a part of it and have that space in there. And so this is easy by keeping things organized, keep clutter out of the way, maybe even keep things in the resource room. Only pull out what you need for that day, for your activities in your teaching environment. What toys do you might just need for that day? And then keep everything else in a resource room or stored in cabinets away. And so this will help you as you're in that process of, okay, how can we keep our environment inside and outside the classroom safe and so where we can be effective? And then fourthly, we have to be creative. And so we have to think outside. And I want to say, think outside the crayon box. And so how can we think outside of the box when we're teaching? One of the key aspects we can do is create interest as you're teaching. I always love to bring something in, here on this table, I have a plant. Like bringing something in that's a visual element and placing it in the room in a prominent location where the kids will see it. Kids' curiosity will start and they'll be like, why do you have that plant? Or why is there a tent set up in our room? Then you can always create this interest. Well, hey, guess what? You have to come back next week because the tent's going to be a part of our story. And we're going to see how we're going to use this in our story next week. So come back next week so you can. So you've created this curiosity, this anticipation with the kids that they're like, oh, I want to come back next week so I can maybe see what we're going to do with this tent that's in our room. And so create interest. Bring some visual elements if you need to as you're teaching so that it incorporates all the different learning approaches too that you may be dealing with in your classroom as well. Use movement when you're teaching. We mentioned it earlier that especially with boys, they need movement to learn. And they can't just sit for that whole hour and you expect them to absorb everything. You've got to incorporate movement. And if you incorporate movement, there's something in the brain that just connects more and they're able to retain more. So use that creativity as you're teaching the story to incorporate movement. And then let the kids use their own creativity in retelling or recreating what they learn. You can easily take just a sheet of paper, and I say with those younger preschoolers, just take a white blank sheet of paper and give to them, or construction paper. Give them some crayons and let them recreate what they heard in the story and use their own creativity as they go through things. And your older kids, they love, or even older preschoolers, let them retell the story. Let them be the actors in it. And so even with ourselves, us be creative, create that interest, but then let the kids use their own creativity as well as you teach. And I know this may not come easy for a lot of you as you're thinking, I'm not a very creative person or this or that. That's where you can always tap into maybe your co-leader or co-teacher that you're teaching with. You can always Google too different ideas on certain things and might be surprised at what you find out. And then also going back to being prepared and allowing time. If you prep ahead of time, sometimes throughout the week or several days later, you might be like, oh, this would be a really good idea to incorporate into our story for Sunday or for Wednesday night whenever you're teaching. And so there's some ways to try to incorporate and be creative as you're teaching. And then fifthly, be consistent. Children need to develop trust and know that they can depend on you. And this cannot be developed unless there's consistency involved. And so even in our own relationships, we're not going to be able to develop those relationships if we don't spend time with them over time and on a consistent basis. And so show up, be there when you're needed. And so develop that consistency with your class and with your kids, because you won't be able to get to know the kids unless you're there on a regular basis. And this also helps you to establish rules and guidelines for children to follow. When those are consistent, it helps even in that behavioral issues you may have in the classroom. If you're developing that consistency helps to build trust in relationships, which in turn will help a child develop trust in relationship with God later on in their developmental stage as they grow and develop. And so what you want to do is you want to build that trust early on, even in that bed baby's room. You want to develop that sense of trust so that when they reach that elementary age, older elementary, preteen age, and they're starting to put the pieces together, and you say, hey, can you trust God as your personal savior? They understand the concept of trust because they learned it in that bed baby room, and you built upon that foundation. So be consistent, show up, and be on time. And then sixth point we want to make is we want to be informed. We've got to know the kids in our class and their families. Get to know their likes, their dislikes. And this is where consistency will come into play. Learn how they learn best. What different learning styles do I have in my class? Do I need to incorporate more musical elements? Do I need to incorporate more hands-on or events where we're moving and things like that because of the kids that I have in my class? And then what's going on in their home life? What ministry needs do they have? A lot of times this can be found out through prayer request, talking with the kids, or even just connecting with the parents as they're dropping off and picking up the kids. How can I be praying for you? And another key thing, how you can really connect with the parents, get to know the parent's name. I can't tell you that once you have kids, we usually lose our first name. We just now become, oh, that's Susie's mom, or that's Joey's mom or dad. And so get to know the parent's name so that you can engage them when they're dropping off and picking up. And let me tell you, that will speak volumes if you take the time to get to know the parent's name, because it's usually pretty quick to get to know the kids' names, but when you can get to know the parents' names, and you can use that time as they're dropping off and picking up, engage the parents. How can I be praying for you? Hey, is there anything we need to know about Johnny today? Is there anything going on that we need to know so we can be better able to minister to them? And so those are some key concepts that you can do to stay informed and know the kids that are in your class. All right, and 7, another thing we can do is we can be a servant. We can help with follow-up. I can tell you, from being a children's minister on church staff, I couldn't be in every place at all times on a Sunday or on a Wednesday night or when we had programming, because we had multiple things going on, multiple classes. And so this is where you can play a key part as a leader. You have the opportunity to focus on those 5, 10, or 15 kids that are in your class, and you can focus a little bit more on, okay, what are their needs? What is going on with them? And so you can help with follow-up and ministering to the families of the kids in your class. A great thing is to do send notes. Send notes when they miss, or just send a note to the kids whenever, just telling them, hey, I'm so glad you're in our class. I enjoy having you and you being a part of our class and everything. And I can tell you, kids usually don't get a lot of snail mail. They usually don't get a lot of things. It's usually us parents that are getting the mail, us adults, and usually it's junk mail, the bills and everything else. But one of the key things that I always open up first, if I see it's a personalized card from somebody, because I want to see what that is first. And so just think the excitement that you'll see on kids if they get something personally themselves. So send notes when they miss, or even if they haven't missed, just letting them know how glad you are to have them in your class. Also send cards to the parents, just telling them maybe how well their child did or how you enjoy having their child in your class. And this will speak volumes to the parents as well. It's always good to kind of think through maybe a contact 1, 2, 3. So the first time that they miss, send a little note or a postcard saying, hey, we missed you. Second time that they miss, maybe follow up with a phone call. You might find out the child's been sick, or they've had a family member that was sick and they've been out for a while. And then the third thing, you might have to get another leader to go with you and check with the parents. Maybe do a visit with them, or just drop something off at their house. Do a porch drop to where maybe give them the activities for the weeks that they missed and everything, because you want them to keep stay up to date and still feel like they're a part of the class. So those are some ways that you can be a servant and continue to follow up. Even if you have the time, attend activities outside of the church setting. This could be going to ball games, dance recitals, different aspects that those kids may be involved in. You don't have to stay for the whole game, because sometimes they can go very long, but just show up for a portion of it. Let them see you outside of the classroom, outside the church walls, and engaging them and letting them know, hey, I do really care about you and care about your family. So be a servant, help your kids' ministers follow up. Make sure you convey any ministry needs that you hear to your church staff, because they may not have heard about it yet. And so be a servant, follow up. And then the 8th thing we want to talk about is we got to be flexible. Some things, let's just face it, they don't always go as planned. And so, and especially in kids' ministry, sometimes we have to be flexible and pivot at the last second and make sure, okay, we walk into our classroom and there are no chairs. Okay, what are we going to do? And so, or things have been moved around in aspects. So be flexible. Don't get upset about it. And sometimes those flexible moments, or as we call them, those stretching experiences that we have, are there to help us grow as individuals to help us grow spiritually as well. And so if we're going to be an effective and A+ teacher, we have to be flexible from time to time. And then ninthly, we have to be patient. I know we don't like to hear that word all the time, but we do have to be patient when we're working with kids. And so kids all learn at different paces, so we have to have patience with them. And especially in the classroom, sometimes may erupt, and so we need to try to redirect guide behavior as best as we can. One term we like to use is that sometimes we may have those extra grace required kids in our class, that we just need to have that little bit of extra grace to deal with them. And so if we do have some of those extra grace required kids, some things that we can do is don't tell them what they can't do, but tell them what they can do. Set those policies and guidelines for your class, portray it in a positive manner to where the kids understand and grasp, hey, this is what we need to do. Be consistent with that. Reiterate it from week to week. And we can't expect those extra grace required kids to really act in the behavior that we want them to just because they're inside our church walls. We have to teach, we have to show them that love and that grace and let God change their heart in that aspect. And a part of being patient too, another key aspect is we don't want to blow up with them. Kids, I'm sure, get this enough at home. And so even if we have to, as one leader told me one time, she said, sometimes I just have to turn around, pray for a little bit more grace, and then turn back to address the kids. And so even if you have to do that, do that. And so whatever you can to create that positive environment that you can in your classroom, work to do that so that you can be patient, give that extra grace that you might need to give for some of the kids in your class. And then lastly, let's think back. I think this one's so important. We have to be excited, guys. Show up with a smile. And so we want to be excited. We want kids to know that, hey, we're excited to be here. We want you to be here, and we want to show God's love to you. And so be excited. Show up with a smile. Kids need to know that they have a safe, secure, and loving environment to come to so that they can grow spiritually, developmentally in that aspect. And so I always tell leaders, leave your problems at home. Even those disgruntled feelings, leave them in the parking lot, leave them in your car. And so even if you need to take a few more minutes, put more of that armor on, say another prayer before you get out of your car and enter the church or enter your classroom. Do that, because your attitude is going to quickly set the tone for your class. So if you come in with a disgruntled attitude, disgruntled feelings, guess what? Those kids are going to pick up on it. And soon it's going to set the tone for your class. And so you want to come in, be excited, show up with that smile. And another thing, don't do a negative comment. If you need to address something negative about the child with the parent, make sure you don't do that when the child is in earshot, because you don't want that child walking away thinking, okay, they didn't really like me. They said all this negative stuff about me. And so you want them to leave on a positive note. So if you do have to ever address anything, address it one-on-one with the parent when the child is not in earshot. And so what you want to do, try to find one positive thing that you can say about a child when the parent's coming to pick up, and share that with them as they're picking up their child that day. So try to find one positive thing, even if it is, Johnny did a great job picking up the crayons and putting them back in the crayon box. If that's the only thing you can find positive about that child that day, at least do that. One positive thing. And it's okay. If it's positive, make sure the child is in earshot and they do hear that, and hear you share that with their parents. And so find one positive thing that you can. Be excited. Show up with that smile and have fun. Teaching kids is not supposed to be something that's dreaded. We hope that you have fun in the process, because we want you to be passionate. We want you to invest in the kids in your ministry and share God's love with them. That might be the only of God's love that they see that week. And so we want to make sure that you're doing that. And so hopefully these 10 tips have helped you out a little bit as you're trying to think through, how can I be that A+ teacher and be effective and continue to build on those foundations that is vital for a child to develop spiritually.